welcome all you audio electronics fans out there on YouTube. Here at Blue Glow Electronics, we're going to try something a little new today. I get a lot of questions, probably on average of 5 or 6 a day, via emails, text, Facebook post, and or YouTube post. And I, a lot of those I just type a quick reply and give people the info they're looking for. But some of these I think are worthy of more than just that person getting the insight. Some of these I think are worthy of bringing forward and kind of dropping into a YouTube video for everyone to get to see. So that's what we're going to do. Any of those that, are kind of worthy of bundling up, I'm going to reply back to the individual and say, hey, I'm just going to answer your question via a YouTube video, so stay tuned. So that's what we're going to do. I'm also going to try to add in a little tech tip every time, just something short that on top of those questions, give you a little insight into something, and we'll see how this goes. So give me some feedback, and we'll keep making these if feedback is good. So let's dive on in. Okay, our first question comes from Dynamic881964, and the question was a response to my Deoxys Demystified video. And just an interesting tidbit, the people at KEG who make the Deoxys actually liked my video. So I thought it was pretty interesting that they actually saw this thing and responded to it. So anyway, the question is, are these products safe for wafer switches that are made of phenolic resin? And I'll give you my default answer was going to be absolutely. I've been using Deoxys D5 and its previous iterations for approximately 20 years, as long as I can remember this stuff's been out, to clean wafer switches, which are typically band switches, AM, FM, auxiliary type things, and stereos, and never once had a problem. Zero, not one, and it's always worked. So I'll lead with that. But then I got this question. I thought, I always like to give a well-informed answer, and maybe I'm not always the expert. So I did some research on YouTube, and lo and behold, I found some scenarios where people have said using the Deoxys causes some issues with these wafer switches. And what it is these phenolic switches are made of this compound called phenol, and phenol is it's a product made up of carbolic acid, and it's basically just like a wafer type, almost like a cardboard but a little harder type material. And what they're saying is Deoxys can get into the edges of that, and much like cardboard would, and can actually swell a little bit as the chemical gets inside of the edges, causes it to swell and can cause them to to warp a little out of shape, and the contacts may not make good contacts. So, like I said, I've never personally experienced that because most of the switches I'm working on are in Marantz units or Pioneer or whatnot. But I could see a scenario where if the switches were a little less heavy duty and maybe the wafers were a little thinner, where this could play out. So what people were recommending was, instead of using the spray Deoxys, to actually use the type that comes in the little bottle. And I can post a picture of this up that looks like a fingernail polish, where you brush it on and you go in there and clean the contacts. Some of these phenolic switches actually have silver plated contacts going around them, and I also read where using a little Tarnex on those will really help get rid of the tarnish, and then you can put a little of the Deoxys on it to, one, help finish cleaning it, but to two, put some lubrication there. So hopefully this provides you a little insight, and we'll kind of take it from there right on into the next question. Up next, I got a question from Greg, and his question was basically, hey, I've got a Marantz receiver, tried some stuff in the past with different lights and LEDs, and where he made his own little strips, didn't work out, and he saw the ones I was using in my video and said, wow, where do you get those things at? And so I thought I would tell people where I get them at. They're not expensive if you get them in bulk, and so here is the link. And up next, I got an email from Dave, and his first question here says basically, you seem to be pretty fearless when you go after those face plates with the Mr. Clean solution. I'm scared to death watching your videos. You tear into those areas with lettering. Haven't you ever had lettering come off? There's some brands that are easier to damage than others, assuming you've never done this to the backside of a tuning dial. So, I've never had an issue. I'm always gentle. I always use soft brushes. most of this lettering is silkscreen painted on these things, and it really doesn't come off. So I would just say take it slow, take it easy, be gentle with the Mr. Clean stuff. I've never had an issue. As for the back of a tuning dial or whatnot, yeah, that's typically some pretty soft paint on the back of those. And if I'd use anything, it's maybe just a tad drop of soap in with some water and just gently wash those things off, because a lot of times they have some smoke residue on the back of the glass or whatnot. But just be super gentle and don't leave any kind of solvent on there, the paint, for any length of time. It will cause you issues. So yeah, that's a simple enough answer. And Dave's second question is, how do you get? Tell me more about getting cigarette smell out of gear. I've even heard you can wash a circuit board with water. Absolutely. Most of this stuff's pretty durable. Get you a paper towel, spray some of the Mr. Clean on it, and just get in there and kind of wash, wipe everything down really good. The Mr. Clean, I like it because it's got the built-in Febreze stuff, and it's really good at getting rid of smoke smell. So, yeah, don't be afraid to try some of this stuff. Pick up a couple used rigs at, stereos and whatnot at flea market or pawn shops or whatever, and just play around with some of those till you get comfortable, and you'll build up your confidence. Dave's third question kind of has two parts to it here. The first part is, I hear you talk about when restoring old stuff, putting in higher value caps or whatnot than ones originally installed. So look, here's the general rule of thumb I use on that. I try to stay within that 5 to 10% tolerance range. Let's say you're working on an old unit and there's a 50 microfarad capacitor in it. Well, guess what? I'm going to replace that with a 47 microfarad capacitor because they don't really make 50 microfarad capacitors anymore. So I'm 3 microfarad down from 50, which is a 6% variance. I'm still well within tolerance in that space. Similarly, if I get an opportunity to bump up from, say, maybe 60 to 63 microfarad or whatever, I'll take that still 10% swing or whatnot. Now, working on tube gear, a lot of times I'll try to add a little capacitance, but you can always go back to the tube manual and look at what your your rectifier tube has as a maximum capacitance value on the first stage after it. So if you ever get any questions specific about that, shoot me an email or whatnot. I'll try to help you directly. But in general, try to stay within 10% and you're good to go. And the second part of Dave's third question is hey, when replacing old parts, can you talk a little bit about which types are either quieter or better for replacement in old vintage electronics? It says most of the old caps seem to be a given to just replace, but I've also heard newer transistors are quieter than what was available back in the 70s. So danger, Will Robinson, on this one. Replace caps all day long, no problem. Transistors, not so much. A lot of what you find these days are equivalents or substitutes, not to the exact specs. So I never go into a vintage piece of equipment and replace transistors just for the fun of it. Now, having said that, there are some transistors in the Marantz units in the phono section and the preamp board that are known for breaking down over time and having noise, and they're kind of a known factor out there. So you just have to replace those with some modern equivalents and move on. But never would I pull all the transistors out of a unit and replace them with modern equivalents, because a lot of times those equivalents may not match right up. So caution on that one. And you just have to dig. If you're working on a piece of equipment, let's just say you went out today and you were at a flea market and you found maybe a Pioneer SX, 780 or something, and bring it home, get it on the bench, pull up Google and type in SX 780, problems, issues, transistors, whatever, capacitors, whatever you're looking to replace, Google about it and see what other people are saying about those things. It's exactly how I do it. So jump in line with me there. And Dave's last question: do you use fader lube only on slider type pots, or is it for all variable resistors? And do you treat it with D5 first and then use the fader lube? So I only use fader lube on sliding type pots where it needs a lot of that extra lubrication, because you're really working with a phenolic board there with some type of painted on carbon, typically resistive strip. I do sometimes use D5 to clean them first and then apply the fader lube after that. So it's a good approach. But normal pot, normal switch, whatnot, normally just use the D5. And up next we've got an emailer from that's stationed in Kuwait. Sounds like they've got some decent test equipment doing some of the same kind of work that I do. They had a couple questions. One was they've got a Marantz PM94 amplifier. Do I have any experience with that amplifier? I don't. I've seen them before, but I've never actually worked on one. And they're decent amplifiers. Had a question here, and that's just based on looking at the schematic. He says gone through and replaced the capacitors, heat sink compound for the transistors, etc. But the customer before had said it had smoke from the protection board. What things should I take care? Definitely would check all your diodes in it. Check all the transistors in it that you can get to easily and pull of significance. Your power and your driver transistors. Definitely check the capacitors. Make sure you look at all the traces. Make sure you don't have any circuit board traces curled up anywhere or not making a full connection. Do things like that. Just give the unit a once over and then bring it up and see what happens. There's not a lot else you can do. I mean, other than check all your components. Make sure you don't have any burnt resistors anywhere. Those types of things. And then you said you also bought a Marantz PM80 Mark II from the secondary market recently. Looks like a good amp. You're asking a question that it's not using JFETs, it's using your normal dual transistors. This is causing inferior sound quality. Not necessarily. Those things can sound really good. So if you've got some issues with the sound quality, I would check the bias. Start checking all your voltages throughout it. And kind of take it from there. And then you're asking about output transistors of the AU919 amplifier, and they seem pretty rare to obtain. And if you needed any advice, you can reach out. That's something I've ran into personally, and I can show you a couple things here online. But basically, there's a couple ways you can go about replacing them. A few years back, some company made some replacement transistors somewhere in the year 2012, 2013. And they kind of hit the market. They were out there. They did a really good job replacing the original transistors that are way obsolete at this point. However, they've stopped making those, and they're kind of drying up at this point. So you can still find them out on eBay for about $20 a piece. So you'd need a $40 pair on each side. Another option is to replace them completely. And I'll show you a picture here and give you a link to kind of a modification you can do to replace those things. It works out pretty well, but maybe you've got another way. If so, shoot me an email and we can talk about that a little bit. And then finally, the last question on here was kind of, can you help me with cleaning vintage amplifier boards? Alcohol is not really available here in Kuwait. Hey, see if you can get the Mr. Clean stuff that I use. It works really well with cleaning a lot of different stuff, but if you're trying to get down and clean off stuff like flux from soldering and things of that nature, you're going to have to find something with some solvent in it, some type of alcohol, or I wouldn't go as far as mech, but maybe some mineral spirits or something along that line. Okay, another question I've gotten recently is, how accurate is my queue on my website, and how long does it take to go through these? Well, first off, I'm a pretty busy guy, and I do this on the side, so it's more of a hobby than a business to some degree. So on my website, I say about a week per device that's in my queue right now. And if you kind of count, there's 12 items in my queue right now. So if somebody brought got their item added to the queue right now, it's about 3 months out. But I will tell you, there's a plus or minus good 50 or 60% on that. Because sometimes I don't get to something in a week. Sometimes I have to order parts. Sometimes a weekend will roll around. My kids are in town from college. My wife's got plans, and I don't get to work on stuff at all. So I pretty much have about 8 hours on the weekends, and then I try to do a little bit at night along the way. But sometimes that gets trumped. So this 3 months could be 5 months. No guarantees on that. Just thought I would answer that question for folks. One other good thing about getting a glimpse of the queue here, you'll likely have a glimpse as to some of the upcoming videos in our future. Something else some of you may have seen recently is if you send me a message on Facebook, you're going to get an automatic response from Facebook. It's basically an out-of-office message. It lets me populate the person's name, and then it kind of gives them a message. Basically what I'm saying is don't send me Facebook messages. It is the most cumbersome, clunky, easy to get lost system I've ever used, and I've just had really bad luck with trying to stay connected with customers using Facebook messaging. It's hard to search, etc., etc. I could go on for days. So you get this response, please turn around and send me an email. That's something I can track. It sits in my inbox until I deal with it. It's easy to search within Google, and it's really easy for me to track emails. So just thanks everybody for putting up for this little nuance I've got. All right, and we have a new logo. I pinged a buddy of mine the other day, Nick Gagnon, who does some graphic art work for me for my record label. And I said, hey, Nick, I need an avatar. I've got this long banner graphic that I use today, but a lot of the websites and forums I post on, they want a little square avatar. So Nick threw this together with me. We iterated a few times on it, and I'm extremely happy with how it turns out. So hopefully you like it and you'll keep seeing it in the future. And last but not least, our little tech tip for the day. So working on this Marantz unit for a guy, and he had bought it at a flea market. And whoever he had bought it from had used some cleaning material to try to clean the pots on the front of this thing. And apparently had used vast amounts of it. It had gotten in behind the dial plate, as you can see here. And it had, I guess, sat for a while and started etching some of the paint on the back of the dial glass away. So you could hold the thing up to the light, and down at the bottom here, I'll point to it with an arrow, you can kind of see where you can start to, when you hold it up to a light, you could see white light coming through the black where it had been pitted and whatnot. And so thought about what to do there, and I ended up, I was out and about shopping one day and just happened to, my wife was looking for some fingernail polish or something, and I noticed they sold black fingernail polish. So I got some black gel polish and painted the black of this dial, as you can see here, along the top and one edge right there. And it looks sturdy as can be. Now when you hold it up to the light, you cannot see through it. So it has solved my problem. It's kind of the first time I've ran into that personally. I have had to try to repair some lettering and whatnot on things before using a little paint pen. But it's the first time I had seen solvent actually etch big chunks of paint out of the back. So that solved the problem, and hopefully we all learned something from it. Everybody, thanks for watching this question and answer and tips. Give me some feedback on it, and got a couple more fun projects on the bench I'm working on videos for right now that'll be coming soon. Thanks again.